When an African tribal chief converts to Christianity, what happens to all his wives? Should he divorce them and send them back to their parents' home in shame and penury? Or should he live away from them in a separate house, but continue to provide for them financially? This is a classic problem for missionaries in countries that practice polygamy, and one to which there's no easy answer. The Jews whom Jesus lived among had the same problem. Polygamy had been considered perfectly normal and proper until the Romans took over and said it was disgusting and immoral. The Romans allowed Jews to continue practicing polygamy in Palestine, but elsewhere in the empire, monogamy was strictly enforced. Many Jews living outside Palestine, therefore, got used to the principle of one wife, and it seemed natural to them. The Old Testament allows polygamy, though it doesn't encourage it. Great men such as Abraham, Israel, Judah, Gideon, Samson, David, and Solomon had multiple wives, though the Old Testament records many problems that resulted. However, the law actually makes it mandatory in one circumstance. If a married man died without leaving a male heir, his brother was required to marry his widow, regardless of whether he already had a wife. This was so that she would have support during her old age, either from her new husband or from her son, and so that the family name and land would be passed on. Jesus took the side of the Romans against the Jewish establishment on this occasion. Jews outside Palestine showed that polygamy was wrong by adding a word to Genesis 2:24. And those two shall become one flesh, even though no Hebrew Bible has the word two. Jesus quoted Genesis 2:24, including that additional word two. And by deliberately doing this, Jesus emphasized he agreed with those Jews who taught monogamy, contrary to the Pharisees. Enforcing monogamy created a new problem for the church. Suddenly, there were more widows without husbands and without support, because they couldn't become someone's second wife. The church therefore created a new type of social club for them, a widows' association. This was one of the first things that the fledgling church did, and right from the start it was problematic. Greek-speaking widows complained that the Aramaic-speaking widows were given more food. Young Timothy, leading the church in Ephesus, had other problems with his widows, and Paul had to write a whole chapter to help him cope. Nevertheless, this association was a good solution to their needs, and it was far better than expecting these women to each find a new husband. Why did Jesus and Paul change God's commands? This doesn't mean that God had given a wrong command to Moses. It was the purpose of this command rather than the command itself that was important. And it was this purpose that Jesus was upholding. God's purpose for marriage was to help individuals find mutual support in families. When there were too few men due to warfare, this purpose was accomplished by allowing polygamy to ensure male heirs. In more stable times, polygamy resulted in many men remaining single, because wealthy men could have many wives. So, in order to maintain God's purposes at times like these, the rule about polygamy had to change. God's purposes are eternal, but his commands change in order to carry out those purposes in different situations. We might summarize God's purpose in the words of Psalm 68. God sets the lonely in families. We can feel smug that our society doesn't allow polygamy, but in some ways we are like the Romans, whose law was based on a morality that most didn't follow. Despite their official condemnation of polygamy, many respectable Romans divorced at the slightest provocation, and they had mistresses. Jesus criticizes polygamy as an imperfect version of the lifelong committed relationship of a 1+1 marriage. our society recognizes that this is a very special relationship and we strive towards it. But in many cases we fail. So much time and money are spent on the wedding and an almost equal amount on a subsequent divorce. But often we spend very little time, care, or attention on the marriage itself. So if Jesus was preaching to us, I think he'd be commending date nights and marriage courses. God bless.